Hi, this is Anna Bevan Gravely with NCFREE, and I am joined by Judge Lucy Inman, who is running for North Carolina Supreme Court. Judge Inman, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything you'd like to share with our members before we get started?
Thank you so much for inviting me to join you. I'm a judge on the North Carolina Court of Appeals. I've been a judge in North Carolina for a decade, and I'm running for an open seat on the North Carolina Supreme Court to protect our justice system from partisan ideology. I don't believe partisan politics has any place in our courts. I grew up in Raleigh. I worked for my first few years out of college as a newspaper reporter, and it was in covering the courts that I realized I wanted to participate in the justice system. And I look forward to answering your questions today.
Awesome. We'll go ahead and get started. Which one of the current or recent U.S. Supreme Court justices do you think reflects your judicial philosophy?
That is really impossible for me to answer, in that every judge and every justice is an individual. There are work by all of our current Supreme Court justices and prior ones that I could identify with. I will say that a quote that has stuck with me was something that Justice Kagan said in November of 2016, and it was the 2 days right after that election. I was at a national summit among judges in our federal and state courts all across the country, and she was the keynote speaker and was asked, what do you think the changes will be in the federal judiciary as a result of this election? And she said, precedent is a great brake on change. Those who are eager for change are going to be disappointed. Those who are afraid of change don't need to be so afraid. And that really touches on the fundamental principle of stare decisis in our justice system, and that is following the court's precedent and not overruling precedent unless there's a really good reason to do so. And that is one of the most important values to me as a judge.
Yeah, thank you. How would you describe your judicial philosophy?
My philosophy is one of honest analysis, respect for the rule of law, and respect for every party who comes before the court, as well as our general public. And the reason I said the last thing is because when our appellate courts decide cases, they involve individuals, they involve businesses, they involve governments, but the rationale in those decisions and the holdings in those decisions really determine the fabric of our jurisprudence for generations to come. So it's really important that appellate courts make their decisions carefully, with detailed attention to the facts of the case before the court, but also with consideration for how that holding is going to be applied later on in other cases. That forward-looking care is really fundamental to me, to the stability of our courts and ultimately the stability of our society. You know, there are different labels that some politicians and legal scholars use: originalism, textualism, consequentialism. I see those approaches as an assortment of tools in a toolbox. They are available to assist judges in resolving issues that aren't clearly answerable on their face. I rarely employ only one of those approaches in deciding anything that is difficult enough that it reaches certainly the North Carolina Supreme Court. At the Court of Appeals, we hear a high volume of matters, and many of them are just decided by established law, and it's not that complicated. But the harder the question, I think the more open-minded judges need to be, and it always being honest. And by honest, I mean intellectually honest. I was not a great math student. In junior high, my math teacher said to the class, you know, if you think that you're going to do okay by just guessing the right answer, no, that gives you half credit. If you want whole credit, you need to show your work. And that's what appellate judges really must do. That's my philosophy.
Yeah, thank you. How would you, or what would you say the key principles of free enterprise are?
Well, to me, free enterprise includes the freedom of choice for consumers and for businesses in purchasing and providing goods and services. A free enterprise system also respects the right of individuals to own private property and to use their property as they see fit. Generally speaking, I understand free enterprise to really rely on the forces of profits and competition in the marketplace to determine the behavior of actors in the free enterprise system.
What kind of activities and jobs or volunteer work did you take part in when you were in undergrad and then in law school?
I will. One other thing, if I can just add on.
Yeah, please, yeah.
You know, courts don't pass laws. We don't enact policies. That's the job of the legislature, the job of the executive branch. Courts are not a policy-making body. But I do think if we look back at the importance of precedents and stare decisis and honest analysis, that fosters the free enterprise system. Because no one is going to want to invest in a business in North Carolina if the rules of the game are going to just change without warning. We need that stability in order for all of the actors in a free enterprise system to know that the rules are not going to change on them. Sorry,
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. And then the question I just asked was on jobs, activities, volunteer work that you did when you were in undergrad and then in law school.
Sure. You know, my first job I ever had, really luckiest first job I ever had, was in a library. Literally, the job was called being a page in a library. And this was to put the books back on the shelves following the Dewey Decimal System, if anyone's old enough to remember what that is, to be able to answer questions from any patron in the library. They weren't called customers, they were called patrons, and help folks find a book they were looking for or do some research and find the answer to a question they had. And that was just such a great first job because I got to meet so many different people, and the product that we were providing was information. So it was just a great first job. When I was in undergraduate school, I worked for a little while in a photo booth. Now that's probably a concept you may never have heard of, but long time ago, before we had mobile phones with cameras, people actually used cameras to take photographs, and they had a roll of film that they wanted to get developed. And there were these small kiosks, usually in the middle of a parking lot somewhere, a commercial parking lot, and people would drive up and I would take their film and send it off to the lab and get it back. And so it was part sales, a little bit technical, and really just an opportunity to meet people from all walks of life. When I was in college, I worked as an intern at a couple of different newspapers, one in Cary and one in Raleigh. And that led me to a first career in journalism for just a few years after college. When I was in law school, I continued working part-time as a newspaper reporter, and I volunteered for Habitat for Humanity, a Big Sister, Big Brothers program, and coordinated a lot of volunteer activities among various students in the law school.
Yeah, that's a lot of activities. I especially think I really like the phone booth job the most of all the ones that you mentioned.
It's just it's something you never would think of now.
No, it is hard to remember a time when there wasn't a camera on your phone. It sounds sad to say that, but I found myself really having a hard time remembering that.
Or can you imagine waiting a day or two?
No.
To see your photos?
Well, I did at one point. I had to, but I can't now. I can't imagine that now. So what would you say your greatest accomplishment is in your legal career and then in your personal life?
My greatest accomplishment in my legal career really has been to serve as a trial and appellate judge. I practiced law for 18 years before I became a judge, first in Los Angeles and then back in North Carolina. And that was really exciting. I represented some famous people. I represented people you never heard of in all manner of cases. The thing I really, really love about being a judge is it continues the search for truth that really sparked me back when I was working in a library and certainly working as a journalist. And it also combines that with thinking about the impact on the lives of people present and future. So really serving as a judge has been my greatest accomplishment, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity. In my personal life, I say that my greatest accomplishment is finding a wonderful life partner. My husband, Billy Warden, we will be married 30 years next year. And not everyone is,
Congratulations.
Thank you. You know, not everyone is so fortunate to really find their life partner. And it takes hard work to make a marriage work for a long period of time. And it is so worth the effort in my case. It takes work, but I also know there's got to be an element of fate there. And I'm so grateful.
Yeah, awesome. And so this next question is actually one of my favorite questions that I get to ask. And it's, what do you think the future of the judiciary is? What changes would you advocate for and why?
Well, the overarching change that I would advocate for our judiciary, and this might be said of many branches of government, has got to be greater funding. Our courts have been, in my view, underfunded for decades, and we need to be able to address legal problems that individuals are having, that businesses are having, that governments are having, with a scalpel rather than a meat axe. We need to be able to have our courts accessible to people from all walks of life. We need to have our courts accessible online for individual and businesses who may not be here in North Carolina, may not be able to walk down to the courthouse. And certainly right now in the middle of COVID-19, we can see how much we need to be able to have that online access to our courts. Parts of the North Carolina court system are still running on a computer program called MS-DOS. I'm pretty sure that predates your birth. And without an infrastructure that can handle the transmission of information that's needed for judges and justices to receive information, it's quite hobbling to the system. We have some specialized courts in the criminal arena, such as veterans courts and treatment courts, that I think are very, very beneficial, and we need to have more of them. Within the last 10 years, our General Assembly created the North Carolina Business Court, which are superior courts dedicated to business disputes. And those have proven to be very, very helpful to the business community and really to everyone, because you have judges who specialize in those kinds of cases, and there's more infrastructure for those cases. We probably need twice as many business courts as we already have. But it all comes down to funding. And we need to see that our justice system isn't just there for the parties who get called before the court. It's there for our entire society. And we need to invest in it. I certainly think we can take some management approaches that have worked in the private sector to help the courts run in an efficient manner. But we also need to have the startup funds really to have it grow.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much, Judge Inman. I've really enjoyed this time and getting to hear a little bit more about your background. Where can our members go to learn more about you?
My website is lucyinmanforjustice.com. You can find me there. I'm on Facebook at Judge Lucy Inman for NC Supreme Court, and Twitter at Judge Lucy Inman. Maybe at Judge Inman, I should know that off the top of my head. But if you put Lucy Inman in your computer or your phone, you can find me. I love answering people's questions because we can't meet in person these days. I'm happy to talk to anyone on the phone or answer an email. And thanks so much for your interest and helping folks know about these judicial races, because most people don't know very much about them.
No, it takes a little bit more looking to find some more information on judges. And this is one thing that we're really excited about being able to offer, is this interview series with NCFREE. So I really appreciate you taking part. And I hope you have a great rest of the day and good luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you so much. I look forward to meeting you in person someday.